What's up, guys? This is the Rap Soup. I'm Matt. This is Nick and Mike. And today we are doing our third installment of the 1990 to present day video series, where we listen to multiple albums every year from those given years, 1990 to today. And today's 1992. The albums we listened to for this were The Chronic by Dr. Dre, Don't Sweat the Technique by Erik B. and Rakim, Whut, the Album by Redman, Dead Serious by Das FX, Daily Operation by Gang Starr, Bizarre Ride 2, The Far Side by The Far Side, The Predator by Ice Cube, Can I Borrow a Dollar by Common, Check Your Head by the Beastie Boys, Shorty the Pimp by Too Short, Real to Real by Grand Puba, Mecca and the Soul Brother by Pete Rock and CL Smooth, Way Too Funky by DJ Quick, Too Hard to Swallow by UGK, Business Never Personal by EPMD, Mack Daddy by Sir Mix-a-Lot, Kiss My Black Ass by MC Ren, Stunts, Blunts, and Hip Hop by Diamond and the Psychotic Neurotics. So we listened to a lot of albums this year, and it was pretty good. I don't know if I liked this year. I think we could all agree that it maybe was not as good as 1991, but it was still really good. So what were your guys' thoughts on this year?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Matt. I don't think it was as good as 90 or 91, to be honest. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't some really good jams in this. You know, like all the ones that Matt mentioned, there wasn't like any terrible albums of there. But I think it's just like a lot of continuation over what the last 2 years have done. It's not that new, not that groundbreaking or anything. Because I know once we get to like 94, the sound is going to completely change. So it's interesting to see how it's gone progressively. But yeah, 92, not quite up to the standards of the previous 2 years, but definitely some heavy hitting albums that we're going to be talking about.
I'd put 1992 over 1990, but yeah, 1991 was the standout year out of these three for me, for sure.
I agree. I like this one better than 1990, I think. But yeah, it was a lot of good rapping, but the albums as a whole were maybe not as good as 1991, but I think the rapping was there. There were still plenty of good albums, but we listened to a lot from each year, and it's just, I feel like there's just better complete albums in 91, but 1992 is still so sick. Give me your top 5 favorite of the year, 1992.
Starr. Number 5, I had Whut, the Album by Redman. Number 4, I had Dead Serious by Das FX. 3 is Mecca and the Soul Brother, Pete Rock and CL Smooth. Number 2, Don't Sweat the Technique by Erik B. and Rakim. Unbelievable. And then the heaviest hitting of them all, The Chronic by Dr. Dre.
My list is very similar, but Nick, you can go ahead.
Number 5, I had Too Hard to Swallow by UGK. Number 4, I had The Predator by Ice Cube. Number 3, I had Mecca and the Soul Brother by Pete Rock and CL Smooth. Number 2, I had Whut the Album by Redman. And number 1, I had The Chronic by Dr. Dre.
Number 5, I had probably Whut the Album by Redman. No. My number 5 is Dead Serious by Das FX. Number 4 is Whut the Album by Redman. Number 3, Mecca and the Soul Brother by Pete Rock and CL Smooth. Number 2, Don't Sweat the Technique by Erik B. and Rakim. That was hard not to put one, but couldn't really put any over what my actual number 1 is, which is also The Chronic by Dr. Dre. An all-timer. It's a classic throughout all genres of music. Yeah, and then my honorable mentions would be some that Nick mentioned in his top 5. I really like Too Hard to Swallow by UGK. And I also have such a thing for Shorty the Pimp by Too Short. I thought that shit was so sick. That album is like the definition of kicking it.
Shorty the Pimp was wicked.
Guys,
So I'm wondering why you guys seem to be so into Don't Sweat the Technique from this year. Matt, you said you almost put it above The Chronic. What made you like this album so much?
Yeah, I'd like to know why it's not in your top 5 too, but dude, I don't know. It's
aggressive.
Out of The Erik B and Rakim albums, I've heard all of them after listening to this. Paid in Full is in the 80s and the one after that, so it's not really in this list, but dude, I don't know. I don't want to touch on Rakim's solo albums, which will come later in the 90s, but it is the best rapping from this era. I don't care what anyone says. From 1986 to 1992, Rakim's the best rapper. I don't care. Ice Cube's really good. He touches it, but Rakim is the best technical rapper. It's him rapping about how he's the best. He has unlimited ways to talk about how good he is. On this album, he does something a little different. He gets a little bit political. He talks about the Gulf War, because that was going on at the time. He's touching like what's that song? Pass Me the Grenade, or I forget the name of the song. Grenade one. I don't know, a little bit more politically charged, and not just him talking about how good at rapping he is, but it's also that. It's my favorite Erik B production as well. Don't Sweat the Technique, the self-titled song of the album. Favorite song in the album, probably. The last 3 tracks are my favorite, and those 3 songs are in my top 5 Erik B and Rakim songs. Other than that, you could put on, what's the song from Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em? Untouchables. I like that one. And then you could maybe throw in, what's the song called from Paid in Full? The biggest one, their breakout song. Why am I forgetting this right now? Their main song, their breakout hit.
I Ain't No Joke.
I Ain't No Joke. Yeah, maybe that, maybe not. But yeah, the last 3 tracks of Don't Sweat the Technique are probably my favorite 3-track run of 1992. And I'm a rap guy, dude. And Rakim, I personally think he is the best technical rapper from 1986 to 1992. And that's why. But I put it below the Chronic because the Chronic is the Chronic. It's like kind of the godfather of West Coast hip hop. Dr. Dre created his own, went solo from NWA after their 91 album, and then Straight Outta Compton, and it's just so creative. It created its own sound. It like pretty much created G-Funk. But yeah, it's Don't Sweat the Technique, to answer your question. It's just because I think he's the best rapper, and I enjoy his rapping, his flows, his lyrics, his cadences the most. Even if it doesn't mean as much as like what Ice Cube was saying, I really like Rakim. And also Redman bursted into hip hop this year, and was also, I think he's one of the best rappers from this time as well. But he wasn't around in like the 80s and stuff.
I pretty much would just echo what Matt said. It's the rapping.
Yeah, it's the rap.
It's just Rakim rapping. It's hard not to super enjoy it.
The fast-paced drums and like the different brass instruments, and it's so up-tempo, and Rakim, it's just the premier rhyming. All the great rappers that came after Rakim, like once you get into Nas, Biggie, Jay-Z, and all the ones that everyone knows, when they were younger, their favorite rapper is probably Rakim. I've heard some of them say that in interviews and stuff, because he is the actual best.
Dude, Rakim is such a big deal. A$AP Rocky's mom named him that.
And what do you know about?
He's named
and apparently his sister is named Erica.
Dude, his mom loved him.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
I don't know if it's true. I was told that by a friend, but yeah. People really like Rakim because he was the guy. I mean, I think it was I kind of feel like, from what I know, I haven't dug too deep into Big Daddy Kane, but I feel like it was Big Daddy Kane really started breaking out the compound syllables, and then Rakim kind of took it to another level. And it wasn't so much gangsta, and it wasn't so much like soft. It was just, I'm the best, and here's a million different ways to say it, and it's just premier rap. Mm-hmm. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but
no, that's what we're looking for.
I
guess Nick, what was the reason for leaving it off your list? I mean, obviously everything on your list is deserving of being on a list, but why this one specifically were you less into?
So it was a last minute removal for Too Hard to Swallow. it was between those two for the 5th spot, and I just ended up choosing Too Hard to Swallow. I don't know. At this point, I've never been that into the kind of fast-paced drum samples of the early 90s rap music, and UGK really kind of switched up the sound with this album. It's much slower, kind of starting the southern hip-hop sound that's going to become more and more prominent throughout the years. And I think, yeah, I mean, I love Don't Sweat the Technique. I've got nothing bad to say about it. I just like the other albums more for their sound. But I definitely agree that I don't know that anyone else was rapping better than Rakim in 1992. Maybe Redman, but it's probably for me.
It was hard to leave Too Hard to Swallow off my list. I really like Too Hard to Swallow. I'd give it a 3 out of 4. But there's some songs that hit and there's some songs that miss. But the ones that hit are pretty big hitters. And Bun B is I'm familiar with all the later MG or UGK stuff. I never really listened to any of their like very old stuff, and I really liked it. So as we continue going into the 90s, I'm excited to keep listening to UGK.
And like I said, it was like literally the invention of the southern hip hop kind of like trap sound. Like their flows on that album are not that much different from a lot of the southern flows we're still hearing today.
Yeah, they're very influential.
And it's crazy that there's that album, which created that sound, and then in the same year, The Chronic, which created like the West Coast, what we see as the West Coast G-Funk sound that was so big throughout the early and mid 90s.
Did we have the same top 3? Me and Mike had the same top 3. Nick had the album instead of Don't Sweat the. But you had at number 3, you had Mecca and the Soul Brother by Pete Rock and CL Smooth. Want to talk about that one pretty quick?
Yeah, that album was
so sick.
Right. I mean, Pete, like, you had your UGK on the South, Dr. Dre in the West, and I think for this year, Pete Rock in the East Coast was really making that sound. There were so many prominent produced albums in this year, and Pete Rock was killing it on the East Coast.
I think I like the production more on Mecca and the Soul Brother than I do Don't Sweat the Technique, but I'm always going to kind of put rapping ability over that in my rankings. But yeah, this would be my number 2 produced behind The Chronic. I really like the production. They reminisce you.
What?
It is an all. They reminisce over you, Troy. It's all.
Oh.
You guys know the story behind that? The acronym? I guess reading that. I think that a lot of people know this, especially older people that were around back then. But they had a friend named Troy, and he may have been. I think he was a dancer or something for Heavy D and the Boys. Kind of just in that crew when he was dancing, and they're at some event or at some place where there's like some form of shenanigans going on. You know, when people like roll barrels down a hill or like a ramp. Apparently there was like barrels tumbling down a hill. I think I'm thinking of the correct situation and what this guy was doing, but I guess he got out of the way from the barrel and then accidentally fell over the ledge and like fell to his death or something. And then they named this song after him, and his name was Troy. And then they made the acronym They Reminisce Over You. And then they made what is arguably like it's an all-time song. It sounds like could you?
It's the best song of the year.
Probably. Could you imagine walking into like Chicago Stadium in 1992 to watch like the 92 Bulls play, and that's playing on the speakers when they're warming up and shit? It's just such a unique, like, you hear that song, it comes on, you hear those horns and brass and shit. It's the embodiment of the early 90s to me, that sound, from what I know about
it.
It sounds like New York.
It sounds like New York. It sounds like it's the sound of the early 90s to me.
Yeah, at its finest. And we can't sleep on CL Smooth, by the way. We're talking about all the production, but CL Smooth was smooth. He's
Yeah.
flowing so well over all those beats, and he's a great rapper.
Yeah, it's all put so well together.
Yeah, I did just say They Reminisce of You is the best song of the year, but it also might. I kind of forgot that Nothing But a G Thing also came out this year, so that's probably the best song of the year, which I think leads us to our next point. Crowning the Chronic as the best album of 1992.
Yeah.
Like Nick was saying, it is the originator of maybe the sickest sound to ever come out of hip hop. When you really think about it, there's of all the great producers of all time, I don't think anything's more distinct than a Dr. Dre beat. Matter of factly, instantly, that man created that beat.
Yeah.
And these were the first beats of it. I was thinking, it's funny though. I feel like there should be a Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg album. I feel like Snoop Dogg not being like part of that is kind of weird because he's on damn near every song, it feels like.
Yeah.
God.
It's probably because he wasn't famous yet.
He wasn't.
This was the invention of Snoop Dogg.
We got that coming up next year. But the thing is, this was so close to 1993. This was released in December of 1992.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But yeah, I'm excited for Doggy Style because not much is cooler than early Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Chronic was just such an obvious choice. How are you going to put anything above that from this year?
Yeah, it's an all-time album across all genres. It is a certified classic, in my opinion. I think that most people would agree.
I don't think there's a single thing that we could say that hasn't already been said about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's no joke. It is what it is. It's the Chronic. It is as big as shit gets in rap.
Groundbreaking.
Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching.